Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show here on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. It is a joy to be with you today. We're streaming on am950radio.com and on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Now, I need you to like and subscribe there. Please like and subscribe there. We'll be giving you more and more content. And I need you to go to the Santita Jackson and Friends page. That way you can become my friend on Facebook. We're streaming there as well. And of course, we're streaming on X at Santita J. That's my handle there. So let's get to it. And I want to remind you, we're closing in on the deadline. October 7th is the last date that most Americans can register or re-register to vote. So I want you to go to vote.org. Find out if you've already registered. Find out if you're still on the rolls. More than 1 million voters have been purged in Texas alone. They're purging us for all kinds of reasons. You might have put in drive instead of street, or street instead of drive, avenue instead of street, all kinds of things. You might have a black sounding name, a Latino sounding name, an Asian sounding name. It's called cross-check. There's a lot that's going on. So please go to vote.org. It doesn't even take a couple of minutes to find out if you're still on the voter rolls. If you find out that you're not, you click another link, and guess what? You can go on and get registered right there. And then there's another link where you can find out if your window has closed, or when the window is closed where you are or where a loved one is. In South Carolina, the window closes on the 4th. In other places, it closes on the 7th. So really, the 7th is the absolute last day that you can get registered to vote if you don't have same-day on-site registration as we do here in Illinois. So let's get to it. Did you see the debate last night? By the time you hear this, you would have seen it and would have weighed in. But I think people are going to tease this out for the next few days. So I want to know, hey, Bernadette, hey, Robert, everybody like and share the show. Thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. What did you think of the debate? And at the same time, I want to take your questions, or what we want to have a discussion about what's happening with Israel, Gaza, the West Bank, and now Lebanon. And where will Iran be with all of this? It's very interesting. Hassan Nasrallah, the head of Hezbollah, it turns out there's something very interesting going on. As I'm looking at the news right now, they're talking about 8 soldiers from the IDF who were killed. And of course, we mourn their loss. Anyone who dies in war, it's a tragic thing. That's what my grandfather said to me before he died. He was a World War II veteran. He said it's never a good thing. War is never good. That having been said, the corporate media are talking about their deaths, but they're not talking about Mr. Nasrallah's death. And it's interesting because Dr. Stevens Eunice from the University of San Francisco and Reverend Dr. Jeanette Wilson, Esquire, and of course, attorney Mark Fancher, he is in the line of the Prophet Muhammad. When you look at his lineage, and I found this out from friends who are of Arab descent. I said, oh, wow, that's big. And then I looked at some news reports, but the news reports are not here in the United States for the most part. That's a big hit, everybody. Can you imagine someone who's in the lineage of the Prophet Muhammad was killed? Yep, this is a big one. So we'll see how this all goes. And the Iron Dome was pierced, everybody. More than 200 missiles. We don't know what this is. And it's always a grave mistake, Dr. Eunice, to underestimate anyone. We were talking about that yesterday. I realized that the military superpower in the area, and one of the military superpowers in the world, in addition to being a nuclear power, is the IDF. That having been said, we are a military superpower, but a funny little thing happened on the forum on the way to Vietnam. We got over there and we got whipped, like we did when we went into Saddam Hussein's territory. Whenever you go into someone's homeland that they know, they lay all kinds of booby traps for you. I mean, because it's their home, Dr. Eunice. So that is the backdrop, and that is something that is impacting the vote. Of course, I'm on my way to Michigan today. Got to call you, Attorney Mark Fancher. We'll be in Detroit Wednesday, Thursday. And It's amazing. Uncommitted are committed to not voting for Kamala Harris. Wow, that's a whole lot. So we're going to talk about that. Dr. Eunice, first, what about the debate? Yes, I literally did buy popcorn for it.
Mhm.
So that I could, because I said this, Americans are very much are very much into entertainment, but this is serious business. It's very serious business. So what did you make? And I will just tell you, I also, having one of the great experiences of my life, welcome Dr. LaShawn Latrice, is having worked at Fox News and having worked directly with Roger Ailes. And he said, look, your job is to win the like vote. It's more of a challenge for you here. That's why you need to be here, not at CNN or MSNBC, because this audience, if they Google you, they're going to go, oh, here we go. He said, but I think if they like you as much as I do, you'll be unstoppable because you'll learn how to craft your message to meet this audience, and they'll like you even if they don't like your politics, and that gives you longevity. That gives you long legs in this business. You can't make it as a television personality, which is what our politicians are now, if people don't like you. And it seems that JD Vance overcame a great dislike gap last night. He seemed reasonable. And then Tim Walz made you liked him even more. You wanted to give him a big hug after it was all over. But what were your impressions?
Well, I mean, Vance is reminding me of a slick CEO lawyer. Almost this kind of snake oil salesman, kind of energy. Um, rather swarmy, but he was, he's trained as a debater and a lawyer, so he was pretty slick and polished, and he was able to make the crazy ideas of the Trump campaign sound almost moderate and reasonable, and that was somewhat disturbing.
Mhm.
Um, but and Vance, he had kind of a rough start, but I think he came on strong, pretty strong towards the end. But there are two things that really jumped out at me. First
Oh, were you
was
saying Walls had a rough start
yeah,
or
yeah,
Vance? Okay,
yeah,
okay, all right.
yeah. Well,
Yeah,
it's had a rough start,
mhm.
but I think he came in pretty strong towards the end. But there are two thoughts. First of all, I can contrast this debate with, say, a 1996 between Bill Clinton and Bob Dole. They
Ah,
are both firm believers in free trade, couldn't care less about manufacturing jobs, and they were part of this whole the bipartisan effort to shrink the welfare state. But now we had both of them put Finland, the social democracy, as a positive example. Waltz declared himself a union man, and Vance tried to, put these, bread and butter issues. And they say, it sounded like they actually agreed on some issues like housing and and childcare. So again, I don't trust the Republicans at all on these issues. They're just going to gut
mhm.
those things. But the fact they're even trying to the neoliberalism is in the past, and that would seem to be a positive thing, and that kind of messaging came out. But what was the bipartisanship that was disturbing was this warmongering, towards Iran. I mean, the first question they asked him was not, what can we do to de-escalate the situation in the Middle East. It was more like, should we should we launch a war against Iran sooner or later? you know, and then they and uncritical support for Israel, um, and even in mentioning immigrants, they didn't not neither emphasize the fact that we're a nation of immigrants, that immigrants create more value for our nation than they take away. So it was there was I had some problems with some of that.
No. Well, it's interesting because we even though the plurality of Americans are independent, when you look at these debates, you're told basically there's only a binary choice that you have no choice but to vote for these people
Mhm.
who in the primary process squeeze out the more progressive candidates while making them promise to support the eventual candidate, and somehow or another they almost always win.
Mhm.
Dr. Judas. I mean, and I think that Americans are tiring of this. But maybe we're catching on. I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, I think there's increased skepticism, which is a good thing. Whereas the bad thing was it gets cynicism to the point of saying, "Oh, they're all the same," So it doesn't matter if it's Harris or Trump. And obviously, that's a very, very dangerous attitude. I mean, I think what's really, really critical is we have to find a balancing act to be willing to critique the system, point out the very problems that you mentioned, but say, yes, that's all true, but we still need to we're not voting. I think it's a Rebecca Solnit. It said it really well that voting is a chess move, not a Valentine.
Mhm.
That we are essentially choosing who do we want to fight. Do we want to fight, kind of the centrist, neoliberal, not questioning, U.S. empire, but generally fairly progressive on some issues, like Harris, or an authoritarian, a crypto fascist, like Trump. Who do you want to struggle against? And I think it's real important. I think Bayard Rustin back in 1964. I forget exactly what he said, but he talked about while he was supporting Lyndon Johnson, and he pointed out that that had obviously had disappointments with LBJ, but given the alternatives, Barry Goldwater, how critical it was, to get out and make sure that Johnson won. I think we're faced with a similar issue today.
What do you? I mean, given the fact that what's happening in the Middle East is the backdrop, and you cannot avoid it. I mean,
Mhm.
because it is increasingly there is no de-escalation on the table. And in fact, Hezbollah, as you pointed out yesterday, said, "Look, we commit to a ceasefire if you do X, if you just less
Stop
than
bombing Gaza and stop bombing Lebanon. I mean,
well,
that's
just
that's
just
reasonable.
stop. If you just
Yeah.
stop that, we will leave you alone, leave us alone."
Mhm.
But even when you look at the headlines, Israel's being attacked. It's like,
Mhm.
wait a minute, hold on. Um, and what do you make of that? Because they both said the same thing.
I mean, this isn't new. I mean, I think about all these interventions during the Cold War in foreign countries who are supporting these right wing dictatorships and death squads, and say we are defending them from communist aggression. It's the same line that we've heard so many decades, where no matter how aggressive, how many international legal norms that the United States or its allies violate, we are always doing it in self defense, and it's the other side, who are the aggressors, the other side who are the ones responsible for the war. Again, this isn't new, but the good thing is that we changed U.S. policy on Vietnam, we changed U.S. policy in South Africa, we changed U.S. policy in Central America. We can't, people can, when they mobilize, can change U.S. policy. And hopefully when Harris becomes president, she's going to realize that the people who elected her were people who oppose these kind of wars, that these are her constituents, and she owes us something. Whereas again, if Trump gets in, it's hopeless. You won't give a damn.
Hmm. Reverend Dr. Jeanette Wilson, what say you about all of this? What did you make of last night's debate?
Well, I thought the debate was civil, and I think that Governor Walsh was very nervous initially. He's
Mhm.
not a debater; he's a everyday Joe, and he was trying to remember I think all of the debate preparation that he had
Mhm.
received, and I'm trying to hit this bullet, hit that. But I think by the end, in the last 30 minutes, he's like, I got to be me. He just couldn't keep doing it because it wasn't him and it wasn't making sense. JD Vance he's a slick guy. And his job was to rebrand President Trump and to make him palatable. And also, I think his ulterior motive was, I am really presidential.
Mm-hmm.
If you elect my guy, if anything happens, I'm next. I got next. And
Did that
I,
work?
I'm not sure it did for everyone, but there's a body of people. If you looked at him, he's young, he's good looking, he's dressed well, and he was playing to all of the crowd. And even
And
when
he
they
came off as a nice guy, nicer
really
than
nice guy,
I thought,
yeah,
right?
he talked about his wife for the first time. Oh, she's a lawyer, and she's this and that, and I understand how it is for parents. No, you don't. And he tried to paint a hillbilly elegy picture of himself. And I think that there are people who believed it. I really do. Um, and then I think there are a whole body of people that are confused, and they're trying to. I think they're probably trying to anesthetize Trump so he doesn't go all the way off, because Vance came off really well. He's saying, he even said to the governor, "Man, I agree with you. You know, we have to be bipartisan on this issue." So I thought it was interesting. And Walsh did not come out fighting, which I think was good in one sense. He's not the person to do that. The only thing I think they missed is, I don't I don't believe most people understand what is the role of the vice president,
Mm-hmm.
and what is the power of the vice president. I get blamed for whatever you do, Santita, if you're my president, because I follow you. I serve at your pleasure. And that's a difficult position, so I get all the blame and you get all the credit. And I think that's something that Vice President Harris should explain to people. You don't have to throw your president under the bus, but you got to, indicate, I have limited authority over these things until I'm in the office. Because Vance kept saying, "Wow, she's been there almost 4 years and she didn't do this. She didn't fix the border. She didn't fix that," which is a good way to throw stuff out.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, the governor didn't respond effectively on those kinds of,
Mm-hmm.
jabs. I do think it's clear to me that both old men should have gotten out of the race, because they can't even. I mean, I'm talking about former President Trump and President Biden. They're not capable of functioning. Whatever it is, I don't know that it's age or they have some pre-existing conditions, but they are not focused and able to just move in a more effective way. And I guess as a child, when John F. Kennedy was elected as the youngest president ever, I was excited. I couldn't vote, but you could just see the contrast. You remember when President Reagan had to take a nap before he could go to China?
Well, but what they did with him, it was optics, and they brought
Yep.
Hollywood with him.
Yep.
'Cause we're among the few who got close to him physically.
Yep. Yes.
You saw, first of all, he rosy cheeked. I mean, really, Doctor.
Yeah.
I don't know if you ever met him. Well, I mean, it was done in a very subtle way. And his suits, he was a youthful 69, 70, 71-year-old. They have him chopping trees. Now, mind you, Nancy, the first lady, was standing beside him whispering.
Yeah.
And all of that. And you knew that he had some cognitive difficulties, but this was another time. People
expected that. And same thing with Roosevelt. Mm-hmm. And so now we're
we protected, right?
We protected John F. Kennedy. None of us knew until years after his death all of the physical ailments he had. Nobody knew that. We saw this robust, young-looking guy he was very articulate, a great speaker. We memorized his little speeches when we were in school. So we don't have that. Vance gives you that image. Mm-hmm. You don't have to like him, but he knows how to play the game. He knows how to smooth you when it's necessary. He took the governor. Man, I wish we had worked together before. No, you don't. But it sounded great.
No, but that worked. I mean,
it worked.
And I will say this: the right wing now, they are finding people,
yes,
who really give you that, who comport themselves in that way. And that is, I mean, and that, look, they understand the media.
He's the
Look, that is,
future of the Republican Party. I promise you.
and quite frankly, of American politics.
Yes.
But but we'll see where it goes. But that's why I mean, because I was not surprised. I just wanted to see how the coaching was going to work. But
Yeah.
when I saw Coach Walls, I knew that it was going to take him a minute to get his sea legs. But you know what? That just made him human to me.
Oh, he's the guy that you pulling for. Come on, man. We want you to,
Yeah.
you get it. And I like the way he handled, even, he said, oh yeah, I made a mistake. I make mistakes. I'm not a perfect guy. He's that guy.
Mm-hmm.
So he's likable. He's relatable because he's the average American. He's the average person on the street. He could talk to anybody. And the fact that he was going to get pizza after the debate, it was like, you're a real small town guy.
Oh, people need to cut it out, though.
He went to get pizza.
I mean, no, I mean, just okay. In the meantime, people getting bombed up all over the world with our bombs. Goodness gracious.
One other thing I want to say,
yes.
I am appalled at the media. How do you just go jump into this debate and the world is on fire? I mean, literally, we're in a major world crisis. And I would have had to pause for at least 10 minutes to throw some prayers out, to just, this is not something you can just click past. The Middle East, that's serious.
Well, before I go to you, Attorney Mark Fancher, Dr. Zunes, I mean, that's one of the reasons, I mean, I wanted to hear your thoughts today about that, because this conflagration is growing every single day in Lebanon. And when I found out from friends, and I mentioned it yesterday, but it really settled in on me that Hassan Nasrallah is in the ancestral lineage of the Prophet Muhammad. I said, are you serious? They killed him? Oh, wow. You guys, we're going to pay for this. Mm-hmm. And no one wants to, even Dr. Zunes, no one even wants to talk. They don't even put that in the news here.
Well, a lot of people claim descendancy of the prophet, and many of them use them for manipulative purposes, including the king of Morocco and all sorts of folks. But I think more critically is that on the one hand, he was a pretty nasty fellow. I mean, he's got a lot of people are not grieving his death. I mean, his support of Assad and that terrible war against the Syrian people, and he's thrown his weight around inappropriately in Lebanon and at least in the earlier phases, and supported acts of terrorism. And I mean, there's a lot of negative things you can say about him. But the thing that's important is that the role of Hezbollah and his leadership have been, because when the French left Lebanon, they deliberately had this divide and rule strategy that divided the political system into based on one's sectarian orientation, Maronite Christian, Orthodox Christian, Sunni Muslim, Shia Muslim, Druze, etc. Divide and rule kind of thing. And there's been all these elite parties. I mean, if you look at the heads of these various parties, representing the various communities, they're the son and grandson of the previous leaders, made them their personal fiefdoms. And what Hezbollah was a populist party that represented the Shia, the largest and the weakest of the three major communities. And again, this is a right-wing populism. This is not the progressive populism, but it was one that actually delivered the goods, because in terms of social services, which the inept, corrupt Lebanese government would not do, and they kicked Israeli butt, in the 2006 invasion and elsewhere. In fact, the only reason they exist was as a reaction to the 1982 Israeli invasion. And this is the thing, whenever a country tries to invade another country in the name of fighting terrorism, they create worse terrorists. When the Soviets invaded Afghanistan to get rid of the Mujahideen, it resulted in the Taliban. Well, when the United States invaded Iraq to get supposed terrorists supporting Saddam Hussein, we ended up with ISIS. And when Israel invaded Lebanon in 1982, the so-called terrorist PLO, it created in the rise of Hezbollah. And this is, and so in addition to all the moral and legal things against what Israel's doing and what the U.S. is doing in that part of the world, is on a practical level, it makes things worse. It creates more extremists, and people will be more likely to embrace not the Islam of peace, not the Islam of social justice, but this really reactionary, form of Islam that in the Shia version you have in Iran and Hezbollah, and in the Sunni version you have ISIS and Al Qaeda and the other Salafists. And so this idea that somehow killing more people will make people more rational and more likely to give in to their oppression. I mean, it just doesn't work.
But but that's what we do with Christianity. We do it all the time. I mean, and the fact is, whatever I might think about Hassan Nasrallah, his people believe him to be legitimately in the lineage of the Prophet Muhammad, and I've got to respect that.
Yeah.
I can't say everybody's part. No, everybody, I'm part of Jesus too. Okay, but that having been said, because these people also, these are ancient civilizations that track their lineages, unlike us. I mean, best I can do is come up with some DNA. For me, just given how Black people got to got to this part of the world. Maybe I'm from here. I mean, please, we did that and we were like all over the map, right? But these people live in these places for thousands of years. And as I was talking to people who live there, they said, oh no, this is a big deal, Santita, because he is from this lineage and this is a problem. And I'm saying we're going to watch that play out. I mean, I hear you, because Hamas was created because the Israelis didn't want to deal with the PLO. And then they funded them. So we really don't know who anybody is, quite frankly, over there. But Attorney Mark Fancher, you've heard us go on and on, but what are your thoughts?
Well, I was, I guess, duty bound to watch the debate, but
I know it was hard for you.
Yeah, no, well, not really. I mean, at most it was, marginal entertainment. But I'm totally indifferent to the outcome of this election, and it just affirmed for me why I am. Many don't understand it, but I take Jesus very seriously, and I know that what he did is that he gravitated completely and totally toward the people who were the most marginalized, the people who were locked out, the people who were the poorest, those who were discriminated against, harassed, and oppressed. And nowhere in the conversation in this entire election are those people. There's a heavy reference and repeated reference to the so-called middle class. There's a lot of discussion about the United States and its domestic problems. But we do not hear about police brutality. We do not hear about the need to make people whole through reparations or otherwise. We don't hear about mass incarceration. We don't hear about poverty and the poorest of the poor. We don't hear about the many, many thousands and thousands of people in Palestine who are dead and who, if they're alive, are grieving the loss of their closest loved ones. We don't hear about the violence that this country perpetrates around the world. We don't hear about any of those things from either of the parties. And as far as I'm concerned, they're both useless. And I have really no interest or concern in dealing with either of them. And Jesus didn't have any concern or interest in dealing with the empire. He said, render unto Caesar that which is Caesar's. And I say, render unto the Democratic and Republican parties that which is theirs. I think that the only hope that this world has is for the marginalized, the damned, the despised, and the poor to look out for themselves, to organize as best they can, not just within the boundaries of this country, but globally. And I think that that yields a type of power and influence that I don't think anybody has really seriously seen or contemplated, because ultimately, those who do have power understand the potential threat of a united world community of the oppressed, which is why they try and ignore them. And when they rise up, they try and wipe them out. So, I don't have much to say, other than the need for continuing organization on a mass level among those who are the most despised. And I think that it's wasted energy. I think it's wasted effort for people who are in those communities to spend a lot of time banging on the door of parties which have been set up to exclude them and to keep them locked out permanently, and to serve only the interests of the masters, the most powerful. I think that what we have fallen into, unfortunately, and I use this analogy very often, is the plantation, where those of us in the fields, those of us who are enslaved, hear that, Miss Mamie may get a chance to get into the kitchen in the big house. And so let's all not offend the white folks. Let's be good, let's behave, so that we can make sure that she gets into the big house and gets into the kitchen. And maybe once she's there, maybe she can sneak us out some pork chops every now and then. Maybe she can give us some of the choice food every now and then. But we can't make much of a fuss about it, because if we do, we'll upset the people who have the power. And I think that we're on a plantation. And I think that we're behaving like enslaved people who are just trying to get some crumbs from the system, who are trying to, survive as best we can without really coming together, retreating from it, organizing in the hills like the Maroons, and making a plot and a plan to bring down the plantation altogether, to burn down the big house. That's what we need to do. Not literally to burn things down, but we need to bring down the system and all of the people who benefit and profit from it. And that's sort of where I stand.
Well, let me say hello to John Boyd Atencio from Farmington, New Mexico, sending you so much love. John Holloman, Bernadette, how you doing? She said, yes, we are on the plantation. And let me see, Robert Williams is with us. Mike, how you doing? Andre here in Chicago. Bernadette, Kenneth, sending everyone so much love. Hannah, I hope that you are doing well down there in South Carolina. Please let me know. Hey, Veronica, let me know, because Hurricane Helene, this is the second worst hurricane since Hurricane Katrina. And people are so many are still without cell service. They are without drinkable, bathable water. And we don't anticipate them getting back up to speed for some time. And this is just as we've sent we're sending more and more of our troops overseas, and we need them right here helping our people. So let's think about that. And let's think about them today, everybody. Sending all of you so much love. And someone has something. I think you're saying something to me. You are this is in yet another language, but I'm sending you so much love. I'm glad that you're jumping in. Kenneth is talking about a participatory democracy. Dr. LaShawn Latrice, what say you? What have you been hearing? Or are you there with us, Dr. Latrice?
Yes, I am.
Okay. So what did you make of yesterday?
Good morning.
You're around a lot of people who are undecided, right?
Yes. And I actually went to a debate party with some people I was invited to. So I am going to really just give my observations in conjunction with Attorney Mark Fancher. I believe that what we see that is happening before us is almost like a joke. And what I mean by that is, as I listened to J.D. Vance talk, he came across as a nice guy who was trying very hard to be nice, overly nice. Whereas Governor Tim Walz seems
now hold on one moment, because you're a psychologist. So I would think that you see things that many laypersons like myself do not see. What was that? Was that what you observed?
It seemed like it was intentional, that he was trying to garner the votes of people who probably have a distrust in Trump and the way that he spews certain rhetoric out. And so my perception about him was that he was trying to overly be agreeable. Almost, it was too too intentional for me, almost scripted. And I called that kind of a well-oiled slickster type thing that was happening, whereas there was kind of a natural, organic thing going on with the governor, where he had a little nervousness, but it didn't take away from what he was talking about. And he seemed, as Reverend Dr. Jeanette said, he didn't respond to a few things that J.D. Vance tried to make the vice president's fault. But I think they didn't do a good job in that respect. But what I will say overall, their debate killed the presidential debate. At least they talked about some issues. The presidential debate was a bunch of debauchery. And it just seemed like we were just sitting there watching them throw antics at each other. And they only said the word fracking like 27 times. But I never heard any real things discussed. But the reason why I'm in so much agreement with what Attorney Mark Fancher says, there are so many key issues out here that were never discussed. We never hear anything about those issues that hit home for us. And so people who are undecided are looking for, what about the criminal justice reform? What about poverty? What about mass incarceration? What about the violence? What about this intentional thing that's going on in our communities to make us feel unsafe, and people are not talking about that? So you have the people dying, in wars. What was most horrific for me was, as I listened to J.D. Vance talk, he actually convinced himself that the rhetoric and everything that was going on with the Trump campaign was normal. Mm-hmm. How dare he? It was so sad, because here you have a person who has somehow put himself in a position where he's going to come out and he's going to try to be so calm. But if you listen to some of the things that he said out his mouth, there is no way humanly possible that he could actually think that it was normal to basically piggyback on what the former president said or what he did. And I think a couple of times when they muted out the microphones, come on now, are you serious? You're saying certain things, but you don't believe them yourself, but you're trying to make us believe them. I think that's an insult to our integrity and to the integrity of the people. And right now it's like we're fighting to obtain some sort of normalcy when there's not any normalcy going on between the parties. So how can we expect to receive that type of normalcy? So we got to get organized ourselves and try to come to some sort of realization that that's not what we're going to get. We're not going to get what we're expecting to get. And that's why I think you see the imbalance that's happening with who is going with what campaign, because I don't think a lot of people watched the debate last night as they did on the presidential side, but I think they saw a different side happen. And I was listening to some of the reactions around me, and the people were more so mortified that J.D. Vance had set himself up there like he was just a top tier citizen, and what he was saying was just so profound. That was kind of a sad thing.
Well, Dr. Eunice, what was our takeaway? Do you think that we're going to have any more debates? Will they matter? Did this debate matter? Because I think that, the point has been made here that most of us do not know what a vice president does, or maybe we've forgotten what it's like to work for someone, right?
Way back in the 19th century, there was a joke that said there were two brothers. One went to sea. The other became vice president, and neither were heard from again. And it sort of underscores that it is not, the office doesn't really do a lot, and obviously it can be very big if something happens to the president. And of course, when you have a 50-50 tie and a lot of votes, like we've had recently, the vice president, as president of the Senate, gets to be the tiebreaker. But it really. It really doesn't do a lot, and it's a dilemma actually. Kamala Harris is in a really tight spot here because only 4 people have tried. 4 sitting vice presidents have run for president since the mid 19th century, and 3 of them lost. And they because they have to, on one hand, they can't really assert what they believe, because if it's different than the president, they'll be seen as disloyal, and it'll end up dividing the party, and it'll be a real mess. And this is what happened to Hubert Humphrey in 1968. He wanted to end the Vietnam War, but he had to keep supporting it because that President Johnson, and anti-war people stayed home, and Nixon got narrowly elected. And Harris has it's the same dilemma here. I mean, from all accounts, she really thinks the U.S. should pressure Netanyahu to stop these wars. She really, if she was president, I think these wars would be over by now. Just as if Warren or Sanders or Buttigieg or a lot of these other folks had been president. They're not near, most Democrats aren't nearly as hawkish, as hardline as Biden. But again, she can't openly break with him. And so you're having a lot of people, including in swing states, progressives, young people, Arab Americans, Muslims, other minorities who are so upset at whom they call Genocide Joe that they like Vance did last night, associate everything that he did or didn't do with the vice president and refuse to vote for Harris, and this could give Trump the election. In fact, one reason I think, frankly, that Netanyahu is pressing these wars more and more and more is because the more people die, and the crazier things get, the more people will not vote for Harris, and it'll get Trump in office, which of course is what Netanyahu wants.
I'm speechless, but I've heard that every now and again. I think people are afraid to say that, though, Dr. Zunis, because it's so horrifying. But it's so clear that Prime Minister Netanyahu does not want peace. And as you pointed out yesterday, who's profiting from these wars? We think that, we're not dropping money in Israel. We're dropping money at Raytheon and Northrop Grumman and Boeing, who cannot keep a plane aloft. I mean, I don't get it. Well, I mean, I get it. And when I go to Washington, D.C., when I go to the DMV, you see all of the money there. See, this is when you see the military industrial complex. Oh. You see the wealth of that area, and you see who gathers in Washington. I remember when I went to college at Howard, my father said one of the advantages of going to school in Washington is that international news is local news. And, an embassy, the White House is just like City Hall, or just, it's just an everyday thing. It's not a big deal. And he said that orientation is very helpful. He said it's something that I think you will enjoy. That having been said, this is when you see where the money is, and you see what so much of this is about. And the bread and butter issues, if you will, were not discussed last night. Everyone's saying that the economy is up here. Everybody wants to talk about the economy because people can't afford groceries. We've got more than 10 million vacant units of housing in the United States. And I appreciate Vice President Harris talking about building new housing. I'm like, but you have housing that's open already here. Renovate these places. Let people live in the cities where they work. Because currently people can't live in the cities where they work. They can't even afford the rent. But we're not having those discussions. It's more theater. And I'm hoping that will not be a turnoff to people, because we absolutely need to vote. And Dr. Zunis, you make the point that, look, you have to, as my mother said, I would never marry someone I couldn't fight. And she said, I would never vote for someone I couldn't fight. She said, that's not good politics. You can't do that. You've got to be able to stand toe to toe with someone. And after I get you in, then I march. I'm wondering if that will happen, because so many people are already turned off, Reverend Wilson. People are turned off. How do we turn them on?
I think that, I listen to Mark Fincher, and I think about the crisis that we have been in for a number of years. And I think we have focused more heavily on the political arena and not spent a lot of time on what your father started with, and that's this whole these economic issues. And because money drives politics. And if you don't understand how money flows and the power that money has over your life, then you don't understand the political system that we have.
Oh, could I underscore your point? Because when you look at the Montgomery bus boycott, economically, that hurt a company here in Chicago who made the buses. And when And when they started losing money, it was a wrap.
Mm-hmm. They said, we're going to stop this now.
Look, Supreme
whole
Court,
South,
hello.
you remember the Free South Africa movement was all about when we said we're going to boycott these companies. We're going to withdraw our enthusiasm for these products. Oh, let's get him out of jail. 27 years later.
Oh, yeah.
They didn't change the policy. They changed their financial impact. And so I think that we have to make sure that we help people understand the connection between politics and economics. And you're not going to get the kind of economics that you want when you have political leaders who don't push an agenda that makes sure you have one fair wage, that makes sure that everyone has a place to stay. That has to be not just with the president. We focus on the president, but there are too many layers below the president that we don't focus on. I was thinking the other day, Santita, we don't know who's on the ballot. Federal ballot, federal level, state level. Nobody's even getting any information. And they're raising money, but we don't even know them. I'm saying we being the average Joe on the street. Say, who's your state rep? Who's your state senator? Who's your county commissioner? They don't know. And they don't know why they need to know. That's something that I think we have to begin to look at and connect it to the absence of grocery stores in your community. The absence of, you can drive on the west side and not get a gas station until you get to Oak Park almost. That's a problem. People have cars, but they don't have access to fuel. I mean, it's just, these are things that I think we should focus on.
But we have to let people know. I mean, because slavery, money, you know, and
it's
the
all
American,
about money. Yeah.
well, the colonial project, which is what this is, money, economics. Mark, you were saying?
Yeah, if I can, I'd like to put a fine point on a good point. I think that the economics is at the heart of everything. I think that's the target. I think that the weapon is mass organization.
Yeah.
Because when you look at the success of the Montgomery bus boycott, that doesn't succeed unless the community is organized and on board and ready to do that. The Free South Africa movement doesn't succeed unless globally people are working together. They have the same agenda and they target it very specifically. What they're going after. You know, divestment was something that shook the economic powers. They really were worried about that. You know, the apartheid regime was worried about it. And, you know, even when you move away from economics, in issues of war and peace, even though Ronald Reagan was a hawk, and if he'd had his druthers, would have been sending the military to every corner of the world to lock it down, he was constrained by the knowledge that on this question of intervention with military forces, the U.S. public was united on that point, and that was a product of Vietnam, anti-Vietnam organizing that had taken place, and a consensus, that we will not use our troops to intervene in wars that we have no stake in, and so he was forced, when he wanted to wage war, to do one of two things: either use proxy forces like he used in Nicaragua with the Contras, or to engage in wars of extreme limited duration, like invading Grenada, so that he's got a 24 or 48-hour war so that he can pull out. And so that's because he knew that people were united. And so I think that the more that we understand the importance of mass organization, and we have a knowledge that the most vulnerable point of the empire is its money, which is all that they care about and all that they protect. If we can mobilize an organized people to strike hard at the economic aspect of the empire, then we can have victories that we've never dreamed of.
Well, you know what, Dr. Zunas, I know you have got to leave, and I want you to be able to get your head around your next interview, but I'll give you these 2 minutes.
Well, we're seeing a very, very dangerous escalation that really could be curbed if the United States took leadership, or at least the United States stopped preventing the United Nations from taking its leadership role. I mean, I just noticed that on my Facebook feed that 10 years ago today, 88 out of 100 senators signed a letter to President Obama insisting that that he do whatever he could in his power to stop the Palestine Authority, from utilizing the United Nations General Assembly, the UN Human Rights Council, the International Criminal Court to address their concerns regarding the right to self-determination or ongoing Israeli violations of international law or anything else dealing with the Israeli occupation, and instead to only work through the US-led peace process, which after more than 30 years has utterly failed to adequately deal with any of these issues. And so, really, the central issue here is Palestine and the right of self-determination and Israel's denial of that right, and the insistence on the U.S. government to continue to support Israel and the occupation, and then rush to Israel's defense when, after the incredible frustration from the occupation, you get extremist groups like Hamas that end up emerging and doing terrible things like they did a year ago, and then use that as excuse for further repression and the like. And all this rhetoric about the rules-based international order that we use in reference to when Russia commits crimes against Ukraine, we put aside, when it comes to U.S. allies, like Israel or like Morocco, for that matter, and their occupation of Western Sahara, that we're willing to look the other way and even back them up. And so, this is until we address these fundamental issues, we're going to see more and more violence and more things spiraling out of control.
Well, Dr. Yunus, maybe America needs to stop being an occupying power too.
I must say, we have our own legacy we got to contend with, to be sure.
You right now, I mean, Puerto Rico's not a state. Virgin Islands, we can keep on going. That's what we're doing to South Korea. That's what we're doing in the Philippines. I mean, we're going to have to make a decision. The Bible says, choose this day whom ye will serve. Exactly. If you just look at the Bible as a text from which you can learn, I'm not asking you, I'm not making this religious for you, although it is for me. I'm just saying, you can derive wisdom from a lot of places, and what we're doing is not working. And Dr. King did say that one day a nation, and you will not know their name, some little insignificant little nation can rise up and take America down because of our own hubris. And we haven't learned that lesson, and here we are. Dr. Stevens Yunus, University of San Francisco, Reverend Dr. Jeanette Wilson Rainbow Push, and Attorney Mark Fancher, brilliant author, social critic, Dr. LaShawn Latrice, community psychologist. I'd never heard of that before, but boy, oh boy, we need you now more than ever. Max Myrick in D.C. sending you, what'd you say? Maybe the U.S. should stop selling them all these weapons of mass destruction. Yeah, because we're dropping the 2,000-pound bombs that we're dropping in Gaza and that we're dropping in Lebanon. There are bombs. This is not going to, this is unsustainable. Everybody, sending you so much love. We're going to continue this conversation with more people in the next hour of the Santita Jackson Show. Stay right there, everybody. Back in just a few minutes. AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota.